Have you ever caught yourself agreeing to something you didn't want just to keep the peace? Or silencing your own opinion because it felt easier to blend in? It seems harmless in the moment, just one more small concession. But what if I told you that these moments, repeated daily, are not small at all? They are the quiet cracks in the foundation of your own dignity. Think about an ordinary day. You wake up, you rush through responsibilities, you nod politely in conversations, you smile when you don't mean it. None of these seem like betrayals. They look like politeness, like adaptation, like being practical. But beneath that surface, something else is happening. You are slowly abandoning yourself. This isn't about dramatic failures or big moral choices. Most people imagine betrayal as something loud and visible, a broken promise, a betrayal of trust. But the deepest betrayal is often silent. It's the daily decision to live beneath what you know is true. It's when you sense that you should speak, but you don't. When you feel you should act, but you delay. When you know you are called to something higher, but you settle for comfort instead. And here is the painful irony. No one else may notice it. On the outside, you appear kind, responsible, even successful. But inside, a fracture grows and you feel it most at night, when the noise of the world stops and you are left alone with yourself. That is when the quiet voice returns, whispering, "You betrayed me again today." Viktor Frankl, who survived the most inhumane conditions imaginable, once observed that suffering without meaning destroys us, but suffering accepted with purpose transforms us. In the same way, silence without truth corrodes us, while silence chosen with integrity strengthens us. The question is, which kind of silence are you living in? So I ask you, how many times today did you betray yourself without even realizing it? Not in obvious, catastrophic ways, but in the hidden, almost invisible moments where you chose comfort over authenticity, approval over truth, routine over meaning. This is where our journey begins. Because once you recognize the silent betrayals, you cannot unsee them. And that awareness is the first step toward a life that is not only endured but lived fully. If you've ever felt that subtle ache of being less than who you know you could be, stay with me. This conversation is about you and the invisible ways you trade your soul for a little bit of peace each day. Before we go deeper, tell me in the comments, have you ever felt this quiet sense of betraying yourself? And if you're new here, subscribe so we can keep walking this path together. What if tomorrow you woke up and for just one day you refused to betray yourself? Imagine stepping into conversations without shrinking your words. Picture yourself declining what doesn't align with your values, even if it disappoints someone. Consider how it would feel to act on your convictions immediately, without the endless hesitation that usually steals your courage. Can you see it? A day where you are fully present, unmasked, undivided. You wouldn't need to rehearse your answers or calculate which version of yourself others will accept. There would be a lightness in you, the kind that comes when inner and outer life finally match. Now think about the ripple effect of such a day. The people around you might be surprised at first. Some might resist your clarity, others might feel inspired by it. But more importantly, you would feel different. You would no longer go to bed with that small sting of regret, that unspoken awareness that you betrayed your own voice again. Instead, you would close your eyes with the quiet dignity of someone who chose truth over comfort. It sounds simple, doesn't it? And yet the reason we rarely experience such days is because self-betrayal has become a habit. It hides itself under respectable names, being polite, avoiding conflict, keeping the peace. But what peace is kept if inside we are at war with ourselves? Here's the paradox. The world doesn't need another agreeable person who conforms at all costs. The world desperately needs men and women who live with integrity, who embody the truth they profess, who can say yes and mean it and no without shame. Imagine if you became that person, not tomorrow, not in some distant ideal, but little by little, beginning today. So let me ask you, what would your life look like if you consistently refused these small betrayals? How would your relationships change if you were no longer guided by fear of disapproval? How would your work, your decisions, even your sense of self be transformed if you lived aligned with what Frankl called the will to meaning? the drive to live in truth, even when it costs something. Close your eyes for a moment and picture it. A version of yourself who does not need to betray in silence anymore. That is not a fantasy. It is a possibility, waiting for your decision. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of us have normalized self-betrayal. We don't even call it that. We call it being practical, being realistic, or not making things complicated. It feels harmless because everyone around us does the same. But the fact that it is common does not make it any less destructive. Think about how early this begins. As children, we learn to quiet our real feelings to avoid punishment or ridicule. As students, we sometimes suppress curiosity because asking too many questions makes us look foolish. As adults, we edit our personalities to fit into workplace cultures, friendships, even romantic relationships. And we start believing the lie that this self-editing is just maturity. But maturity is not the same as conformity. Maturity is the courage to align our behavior with truth, even when it is costly. Conformity, on the other hand, is the willingness to betray ourselves in order to maintain comfort. And here's the insight few dare to confront. The more you conform, the less you exist. When we betray ourselves repeatedly, we construct a mask so convincing that even we begin to mistake it for our real face. We stop asking, what do I actually believe? What do I truly want? What kind of life is worth living? Instead, we ask, what will keep me safe? What will earn approval? What will avoid conflict? This is why the quiet betrayal feels normal. It doesn't scream at us, it whispers. And because the whisper is constant, we mistake it for silence. But deep down, you know it is there. You sense it in the moments of stillness when you realize that you've been living more as an actor than as a person. Viktor Frankl argued that one of the greatest dangers of modern life is the existential vacuum. A life where people have lost touch with meaning and instead fill the emptiness with distractions or compliance. Silent betrayal is one of the ways that vacuum grows. You don't collapse all at once, you slowly hollow yourself out until nothing solid remains. The disruption I want to offer you is this: betraying yourself is not normal, no matter how common it is. What everyone else accepts as just part of life is actually the slow erosion of your dignity. And dignity, once lost, is not easily recovered. So let me ask you, how much of what you call your personality is truly you? And how much is simply the accumulation of silent betrayals? It is one thing to sense that you are betraying yourself. It is another to hear it echoed by voices of wisdom that history has tested. Viktor Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, observed that people can endure almost any suffering if they find meaning in it. But the reverse is also true. When life is stripped of meaning, even comfort becomes unbearable. Silent self-betrayal is precisely this stripping away of meaning. It is comfort that corrodes instead of heals. Frankl himself lived through conditions where survival often depended on compromise, on silence, on the smallest betrayals of one's spirit. And yet, he insisted that the last of human freedoms is the ability to choose one's attitude, to remain faithful to an inner truth even when everything external collapses. If a man facing the abyss of a concentration camp could refuse to betray himself, then what excuse do we have when we betray ourselves in the ordinary inconveniences of daily life? Philosophers before Frankl saw the same danger. Dostoevsky warned that the greatest tragedy is not external suffering, but the loss of self in the face of society's pressures. To live without hope, he wrote, is to cease to live. And hope, for Dostoevsky, was inseparable from living authentically without surrendering the deepest convictions of the soul. Even St. Thomas Aquinas, centuries earlier, argued that man's dignity lies in living according to reason illuminated by truth, not in the constant surrender to external approval. To act against the truth we know, even in small matters, is to wound ourselves more deeply than any insult or rejection could. When we hear these voices, Frankl, Dostoevsky, Aquinas, they are not telling us something entirely new. They are naming what we already feel in our own conscience. That uneasy restlessness at night, that vague sense of disconnection, that moment when you look in the mirror and suspect that you've lost something essential, that is your soul confirming what these thinkers have always taught. Silent betrayal is not neutral. It is the slow death of meaning. So here is the challenge. Do you treat your inner unease as something to escape with distractions, or as a teacher calling you back to yourself? Because every time you numb it, you choose betrayal again. But every time you listen, you recover a fragment of your dignity. And that dignity, once recovered, is the beginning of true freedom. Silent betrayal rarely announces itself. It doesn't appear as a dramatic fall, but as a pattern so subtle that it becomes invisible. Let's trace a few of these patterns together. One of the most common is the yes that should have been a no. You say yes to favors, commitments, or conversations that drain you, not out of love but out of fear. Fear of disappointing, fear of conflict, fear of rejection. On the outside, you appear generous. On the inside, you feel resentment building, but you silence it. That silence is betrayal. Another hidden pattern is delaying the truth. You know what needs to be said, a boundary, an admission, an apology, but you postpone it. Tomorrow, you tell yourself, yet tomorrow never comes. And with each delay, the courage inside you weakens. That hesitation is betrayal. Then there is living through borrowed values. You shape your decisions around what others define as success, respectability, or happiness. Maybe it's the career path that looks stable but suffocates you, or the relationship that appears perfect but feels empty. Outwardly, it earns applause. Inwardly, you sense hollowness. That pretense is betrayal. And perhaps the most dangerous pattern, the slow silencing of conscience. The first time you ignore your inner voice, you feel it sharply. The second time, it's easier. By the 10th time, you hardly notice. Eventually, you no longer hear that voice at all, and you mistake numbness for peace. That numbness is the deepest betrayal. What all these patterns have in common is that they masquerade as harmless. Society even praises them. He's so agreeable, she's so reliable, they're so easy to work with. But underneath those compliments lies a quiet tragedy. Because being agreeable at the cost of authenticity is not a virtue, it's a wound. Frankl saw this in modern life and named it the existential vacuum. It is the emptiness that grows when people live by patterns of silent betrayal. They are busy, active, and even admired, but they feel detached from meaning. They are alive biologically but withering spiritually. Here is the question worth asking. Which of these invisible patterns do you recognize in yourself? And perhaps even more important, how long have you been calling it normal life, when in truth it has been slow self-abandonment? Recognizing these patterns is not comfortable, but it is the first glimpse of freedom, because you cannot fight what you refuse to see. Sometimes the only way to awaken from self-betrayal is through sentences so sharp they leave no room for excuses. Let me give you a few truths that may sting, but they are meant to free you. You do not lose yourself in one grand decision. You lose yourself in 1,000 tiny silences. Every time you choose comfort over conviction, you trade a piece of your dignity for approval. Peace bought at the price of truth is not peace at all. It is disguised slavery. The mask you wear to please others will one day suffocate you if you refuse to take it off. The people you fear disappointing will come and go, but you will live with yourself forever. Which voice matters more? These statements may sound harsh, but they are meant to expose the core reality. Betrayal is never neutral. It accumulates, it leaves marks, and sooner or later, it shows itself, whether in the form of resentment, emptiness, or regret. Frankl himself reminded us that meaning cannot be given, it must be chosen. That choice often requires saying no when everything in you longs to avoid conflict, or saying yes when fear tells you to stay hidden. Silence can be noble, but silence can also be cowardice. The difference depends on whether the silence protects truth or hides it. So, remember this. Avoiding discomfort today creates a deeper discomfort tomorrow. The pain of being disliked for who you truly are is always lighter than the pain of betraying yourself. If you carry only one thought with you, let it be this. The small betrayals are never small. Each just this once is a step away from the person you are meant to be. And each act of honesty, no matter how inconvenient, is a step back toward meaning. You see, words like these are not motivational slogans, they are warnings. They remind us that dignity is fragile, and once surrendered it is hard to regain. But they also remind us that at any moment, you can begin again. So ask yourself, Which of these truths do you most need to hear today? And what excuse will you no longer allow yourself to repeat? Here is a paradox that almost no one names. We betray ourselves because we want to belong, yet the more we betray ourselves, the lonelier we become. Think about it. You silence your convictions to keep harmony in a relationship. You conform to workplace culture to be accepted. You laugh at jokes that wound your values just to avoid being the odd one out. In the moment, it feels like connection. But deep inside, you know the connection is built on a false version of you, which means it isn't real connection at all. It's theater. This is the cruel irony. Self-betrayal promises belonging, but it delivers isolation. Because even when others embrace you, you cannot fully receive it. You know they are embracing the mask, not the person beneath it. And so, even in the presence of others, you feel unseen, unknown, unloved. On the other side of this paradox is another truth. When you stop betraying yourself, you will lose certain connections, but the ones that remain will finally be real. Yes, some people will resist your authenticity, they may even leave. But those who stay will be relating to your true self, not to a mask. And for the first time, you will know what genuine belonging feels like. Viktor Frankl understood this tension deeply. He wrote that meaning cannot be found in comfort alone, but often in sacrifice. Sometimes the sacrifice required is not material. It is the sacrifice of approval. To live authentically means accepting that some doors will close, but it also means discovering that the doors which open will lead to relationships and purposes far more solid than the fragile acceptance you once chased. Here lies the paradox then. In trying to please everyone, you lose yourself and end up alone. In daring to live faithfully to your truth, you risk rejection but discover real community. The path of betrayal feels safe, but isolates you. The path of authenticity feels dangerous, but ultimately frees you. So let me ask you, which loneliness do you prefer? The loneliness of living unseen while surrounded by people, or the temporary loneliness of standing in truth until those who truly see you arrive? The first robs you silently for years. The second costs you in the moment but rewards you for a lifetime. Why endure the discomfort of truth when betrayal feels easier? Because the reward of integrity is far greater than the fleeting relief of silence. Imagine living a day where every word you speak is honest. Every decision reflects your values. Every action aligns with the meaning you seek. Such a day may not be easier. It may even bring conflict, but it carries a reward far deeper than comfort. Inner peace. Not the fragile peace that depends on others liking you, but the unshakable peace of knowing you did not betray yourself. The reward of integrity is also energy. Think of how exhausting it is to maintain a mask, to calculate your words, to remember which version of yourself you showed to which person. Betrayal drains vitality, but when you live in alignment, there is a surprising strength that emerges. As Frankl wrote, those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. Integrity reconnects you with your why. And then there is dignity. Dignity cannot be bought, inherited, or borrowed. It can only be lived. It grows quietly each time you refuse to compromise your truth for approval. It becomes a shield in moments of trial, and a compass when the path is unclear. Without dignity, success feels hollow. With dignity, even struggle feels meaningful. But perhaps the greatest reward is the possibility of love, real love. When you stop betraying yourself, you make yourself available to others in a way you never were before. Your relationships shift from performance to presence. Others no longer meet your mask. They encounter your true self. And while this narrows the circle of who remains, it deepens the circle that matters. The promise is not a life without conflict. On the contrary, it is a life with richer conflict. Conflict that sharpens, refines, and builds instead of corrodes. It is not about avoiding suffering, but about ensuring that your suffering is never meaningless. So ask yourself, what would it feel like to rest at night not because the day was easy, but because it was true? What would it mean to carry the quiet reward of integrity instead of the restless cost of betrayal? The discomfort of truth is temporary. The reward of integrity lasts. Up to now, we have spoken about betrayal and integrity in vivid human terms. But let's step back and see the structure that holds all of this together, the deeper framework that thinkers like Viktor Frankl and others have given us. Frankl's logotherapy is built on a simple but profound insight. The primary drive of human beings is not pleasure, as Freud argued, nor power, as Adler suggested, but meaning. When meaning is absent, the soul begins to wither, no matter how much pleasure or power one accumulates. Silent self-betrayal, then, is not merely a matter of bad habits. It is a direct assault on meaning. Every time you betray yourself, you chip away at the very foundation of your existence. This is why Frankl described the existential vacuum. People who live disconnected from their true values fill the void with distraction, consumerism, or conformity. They may look busy and even admired, but inwardly, they feel hollow. Self-betrayal fuels this vacuum, because how can life feel meaningful if you are not even faithful to your own conscience? Philosophy adds weight to this framework. St. Thomas Aquinas taught that the human good lies in living according to reason aligned with truth. When you act against truth, even for small conveniences, you wound your own essence. You not only harm your circumstances, you harm yourself. Dostoevsky echoed this by insisting that man cannot remain indifferent to truth without becoming divided and ultimately enslaved by falsehood. So the structure beneath silent betrayal is this. Psychology shows us that betrayal hollows meaning. Philosophy shows us that betrayal distorts reason and corrodes dignity. Literature shows us through stories of lost souls how the erosion of self leads to despair. Understanding this framework is not an intellectual exercise alone. It is a compass. It reminds us that refusing to betray ourselves is not about stubborn pride or blind authenticity. It is about protecting meaning, reason, and dignity, the three pillars that make us human in the fullest sense. So next time you feel the pull to stay silent when truth calls you to speak or to conform when conscience asks you to resist, remember this: you are not merely avoiding discomfort, you are shaping the architecture of your soul. And the soul, unlike reputation or circumstance, is the one possession you can never afford to lose. We began with a simple question. How many times today have you betrayed yourself without realizing it? By now, you have seen how silent betrayal hides beneath politeness, how it drains meaning, and how it isolates you even while surrounded by people. And you have also glimpsed the alternative, the life of integrity, dignity, and authentic belonging that emerges when you dare to live in truth. But here is the challenge. This change cannot remain an idea. It must become a practice. Starting today, watch for the small moments, the unnecessary yes, the delayed truth, the silenced conviction. Each time you catch yourself, pause. Ask, what would integrity require of me right now? That single question can turn a day of betrayal into a day of meaning. Do not expect perfection. Self-betrayal is a habit built over years. Integrity is a virtue built through daily choice. Some days you will fail, but even failure can be redeemed if you face it honestly and return to the truth. What matters is not that you never fall, but that you refuse to keep living beneath yourself. Remember Frankl's insight. The last freedom no one can take from you is the freedom to remain faithful to your own meaning. Even when external circumstances strip you bare, this freedom remains. And if it remained for a man in the depths of a concentration camp, it certainly remains for you in the struggles of ordinary life. So here is my invitation. Tonight, before you sleep, review your day. Ask yourself, where did I betray myself? And where did I remain faithful? Do this not with condemnation, but with courage. Each day you practice, the cracks of betrayal will close, and the foundation of dignity will grow stronger. And now, I want to hear from you. Share in the comments one area of life where you feel tempted to betray yourself most often. Naming it is the first step to freedom, and you might find that your honesty gives courage to someone else. If this reflection resonated with you, give this video a like and subscribe so we can keep building a community of people who choose truth over comfort. Because in the end, the silent betrayals only stop when we dare to walk this path together, one honest choice at a time.